Well, hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Legacy Farmer, the podcast. I'm your host, Jace D. Young, and today's topic of discussion is this: seekers versus hiders. Guys, today we're just kind of running into an interesting time inside of the ag industry. And when you think about it, and I think about all the customers we've brought into Legacy Farmer over the years, there's certain characteristics that every single person inside the ag industry has. And what's crazy is how things change over time as well. So I'm going to start off first with a seeker, right? Now, when we think about the characteristics of a seeker inside of just business and life in general, a seeker is somebody who is going ahead and subjecting themselves to take on risk. There's people there that they want to take managed risk, right, and more strategic risk, but there's also people that just want to take risk because they're addicted to the feeling of taking risk. And I'm sure you know people like that in your life. Maybe you are one of them yourselves as well as you're listening to this podcast. Now, the problem with this, though, is the people that do not take on managed risk and are careless with their decisions. Where do they ultimately end up, right? They're going to be in massive financial struggles or problems or challenges or things like that. Now, again, when we think back historically, what's happened in the ag industry and how we've had these rises and falls in prices, and now obviously in today's price world, we're kind of at a lower point in the overall, curve of the market and things like that, where the people that were massive risk takers and wanted to take risk and then could justify that 2 years ago with higher prices for corn, wheat, whatever it may be, they are hurting today, right? And so that's why I say when we are taking risk, like there's a point in your life where yes, you do take risk, but there's also a point too where you have to start learning about and learning about protecting what you've had and what you've built inside of your life for your family and for your operation. So the seekers, for a majority of those people that are characterized as that, it's unmanaged risk, right? They're just addicted to the idea of taking on risk and doing something big and having this big end result and this big outcome, which I get is great, right? We all want to shoot for those things and try to accomplish our dreams and build whatever business we want to build and leave that legacy on for the next generation. But the problem is, though, is that when we do not consider and take into account all of the consequences, the first, second, third, and fourth order consequences that can come into play when we take those decisions. And we're too attached to the end result versus the process that it is going to take to actually make that dream become a reality and things like that. When I talk about my family operation and my granddad, number one thing my granddad did not consider when we got into kind of those final years of our operation were those consequences and the first, second, third order consequences and the people that would be impacted by his decisions. True identity, of a seeker there and taking a lot more risk than what they need to. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the hiders, right? And these are the people that do not like risk. They want to hide from it. They want to avoid it at all costs. Now, a perfect example of this is that if you started farming, or I guess I'll use an example for a customer that came into Legacy Farmer. If you came into farming, for example, in the 80s, let's say you were a young kid coming back, or let's say you came back and took over the operation in the 80s, better yet, what type of person or what type of characteristics do you think that person has today, right? We're 40 years later. What type of characteristics? If you said hider, you're most likely correct because people back then, right, we saw a lot of farms going under. We had high interest rates. We had all these challenges and all these variables that were sinking a lot of operations, which causes people to freeze, right? They don't want to move because the idea of taking action and the risk involved in that time where, man, if I move or do anything, I could lose generations of work or I could lose everything here. So I'm just going to stay still and I'm going to hide from this market or anything like that. Now, again, there are positive sides to hiding, again, if it's managed, right? If it's strategic hiding and like, hey, we're going to pause on this decision. We're not going to take this risk. We're going to protect what we've built. And that's what I'm saying, guys. There's a transition in life. When we think about a person, I'll use myself as an example. When I left the banking industry, me and my wife, we really didn't have a pot to piss in. To be honest, we had very, very little money, very little in savings. And I threw us into, just so much economic uncertainty and things like that. Now, at that time, though, I was young, right? So I could afford to take a significant amount of risk, which I did take, by the way, because at that time in my life, that was my only option. I didn't have anything to fall back on, right? There wasn't anything to protect me. Honestly, I didn't have anything to lose other than having to, move back in with my parents or something like that and have my family living in the basement of my parents' house, which obviously don't want to happen and thankfully did not happen. But at that time, though, and again, just like any young business owner for the most part, when you're first starting out, it's like, yeah, we're more seekers because one, we're comfortable with the risk, but two, we don't really have any other option. We have to take the risk as well. And again, as you get older, if you look at a 20-year-old business owner versus a 45 or 50-year-old business owner, guarantee you their profiles on this risk spectrum are completely different. There's the 20-year-old is going to be much more inclined to take big risk and have potential big outcomes and be able to, weather that storm or whatever that may be. The other guy, the 45 to 50-year-old business owner, they're more risk averse, right? We want to just protect and maintain what we built. I'm past that point in my life where I want to deal with that because they just want to focus on appreciating what they've built, but also it's just your perspective changes as you get older as well, right? And that's one of my biggest fears in my life is I don't want to look back at the decisions that I'm making now or that I have made over the past 10 years and regret because I focused on the wrong things, if that makes sense. And when I'm talking about that, guys, I'm talking more in like the family context, because we want to spend all this time building our business and having an impact, being able to leave a legacy for our kids and for the next generation. But at the same time, we're sacrificing them along the way too. And I don't want to get to a point in my life where I look back and I'm just full of regret because I should have spent more time with my kids or anything like that. Now, there's no right and wrong answer there. It's literally a constant balance and trying to, go with the overall, kind of flow of life and just find that balance in there best you can. But again, when we're looking at that spectrum though, and you look at somebody that's 45, 50, yeah, they're going to be much more risk averse and just focus on protecting. Now, again, though, why is that detrimental? Well, because then maybe we're not seeking out opportunities, right? We're not seeking out new investments where when we do have the capital or the equity in our balance sheet to be able to do that, to grow and expand and things like that. And this is where when you have a 20 or 25-year-old come back to the operation and work with mom and dad that are 55 and 60, this is where the collision happens. And we see it all the time in Legacy Farmer with customers that are coming in and they're 25 to 35, have a young family at home, and they're just constantly colliding with their parents because the parents have all the assets, but the kids have all the ideas, right? And they want to be proactive. They want to take these risks to build the operation. Totally get that. But there's a huge difference between if you're the one that built the assets, right? You're going to be much more focused on protecting them. So if mom and dad were the first generation that built all those assets, yeah, they're not interested in risking that, right? So that's another reason why when I talk about with a lot of our customers having kids come back to the operation, make them build their own thing, make them build a business. Maybe it's a service-based business or a sales type business or whatever that runs alongside the operation, and let them take that risk on their own merit, right? Don't let them use your assets essentially that you've built to take on this massive risk when they don't know what pool they're jumping into. It's a big thing there. Because again, we don't want to rob them from taking that risk. We don't want to take that away from them because there's a lot of growth that happens there. I have a completely different perspective on risk taking now. Because I went through, the first 8 years of being an entrepreneur, and the first 4 especially, I took massive risk over and over again. And I just have a different viewpoint, right? So that's part of our growth. That's part of my learning. I have to go through this to be able to really grow and develop as a business owner. But again, as a parent, if your kids are coming back to the operation, yeah, we don't want to take that away from them either. So they have an option. Okay, great. You can come and work on the operation where we have these set of boundaries because your mom and I built this operation from nothing. We're the ones that paid these mortgage payments and paid off all this real estate over the last 30 to 40 years. You're not just going to go risk this all just on one idea or new strategy or whatever you want to do on the farm. Now, if you do want to take that risk, okay, great. We'll give you some seed capital, or maybe we'll co-sign on a loan, which honestly I don't agree with, but to get you started, and you can take your risk over there. You know what I mean? So it's just, again, we don't want to rob that part of the journey because we have to have that as well. But then I also feel too, once we get older, we have to kind of start experiencing that hide mentality too, and knowing when it's appropriate to hide as well. So guys, the whole point of this is knowing which one is appropriate. Now, the thing is though, is a young kid who is a seeker, or not even a kid, somebody that's at age 25 to 35 who's in that seeker mentality, they don't even know the hider mentality exists, right? And a bunch of lessons in life, or a bunch of just strategy in life comes from having the awareness, right? Having the awareness of the other side. We call it the duality of man, right? For every right, there's a wrong. For every left, there's a right. For every win, there's a loss, right? There's all these things here. So when it comes to risk taking, there's a seeker and there's a hider, and there's benefits and pros and cons to each one of them. We have to know when to activate certain characteristics for each person, because at the end of the day, I want to be both. And as I get older, I want to have a version of me that recognizes and has the awareness to know, hey, I need to be more of a seeker in this situation because of this. And also, too, I need to know when I need to be more of a hider here as well. But that all comes down to the awareness that you have about yourself, your emotions, how you think, the mistakes you've made. Like, you got to go through life experience to develop this awareness. Otherwise, yeah, you'll just be stuck in one side or the other for the rest of your life. And that's not going to serve you or anybody else around you that you're trying to build your family business for as well. So, my friends, that concludes today's episode. Hopefully, you found it really valuable. At the end of the day, I'd ask yourself one question. Looking back at your historical decisions and things you've made, the decisions you've made in your life, have you made decisions from that seeker mentality or that hider mentality? And where do you need to be along the spectrum? And at the end of the day, it's best to be, obviously, try to be right in the middle, and knowing when you need to activate your seeker and when you need to activate your hider and go to more protection mode with your assets. So again, hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll catch you on the next one.